Good afternoon. My name is Jason Chavez. I'm the chair of the Committee of the Whole. And I'm going to call to order our regular committee meeting for Tuesday, January 14th. Before we begin the meeting, I want to offer a friendly reminder to all members, staff, and the public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to moderate the speed and clarity of their comments. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll to verify the presence of a quorum.
Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Councilmember Wansley.
Present.
Rainville.
Present.
Vita.
Present.
Ellison is absent. Osman is absent. Cashman.
Present.
Jenkins is absent. Chuktai.
Present.
Koski.
Present.
Palmasano.
Present.
Vice Chair Chowdhury.
Present.
Chair Chavez.
Present.
There are 10 members total.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is a public hearing for Daniel Lee, the finalist for appointment to the Ethical Practices Board. I'll first ask Daniel Abelson to come up and speak, and then open the floor for public comment.
Good afternoon, Chair Chavez, council members. There's 3 Minneapolis residents who serve on the Ethical Practices Board, and the members are appointed by an appointing committee, which consists of the Chief Judge of Hennepin County and the Deans of St. Thomas and the University of Minnesota Law Schools. The Ethics Code in Chapter 15 of City Ordinances requires a 30-day public comment period, which is now completed, and a public hearing for finalists to the board. Any comments are then forwarded to the appointing committee who makes the actual appointment. The council does not vote on the appointment. It simply receives and files public comment. I'm pleased to share that the appointing committee is recommending the appointment of Daniel Lee for a term expiring January 2nd, 2027. Daniel Lee's appointment fills a midterm vacancy created by the resignation of Michael Friedman in January. And Mr. Lee is here in the audience today, and I'd just like to briefly share some of Mr. Lee's legal and community service experience that I think makes him an excellent candidate for the board. Mr. Lee's been an attorney in Minnesota for approximately 26 years. He has a wide variety of experience. He began his career at Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services, better known as Legal Aid. He was an attorney there for about 3 years. Then he was a community prosecutor in the St. Paul City Attorney's Office. Then he transitioned to private practice as a solo practitioner for 16 years. For 4 years during that time, he also was a member of the Minnesota Federal Public Defender's Criminal Justice Attorney Panel. Since 2022, Mr. Lee's been the general counsel of the Minnesota Credit Union Network, which is a trade association of Minnesota's credit unions. Additionally, in 2017, the Minnesota Supreme Court appointed Mr. Lee to serve on the Minnesota State Board of Public Defense, and Mr. Lee is currently serving as the board chair of the Board of Public Defense. So I think Dan will be a terrific addition to the Ethical Practices Board, and I'm pleased to have him here today for the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Each person will have up to 2 minutes to speak. In order to ensure everyone has a chance to speak, please respect the time limit. Once testimony is completed, we will close the public hearing. With that, if there are any speakers, this would be the time. All right. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll now close the public hearing. As Attorney Abelson explained, we have no action to take on today's item. We are simply responsible for providing a forum to receive public testimony. But before we move on to the next agenda item, are there any comments from committee members? Vice Chair Chowdhury.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Just quick, wanted to thank Mr. Lee, for coming into our chambers and taking up this role. Really excited to see that you're a finalist. Thank you for your contributions to the community, and just wanted to give you a welcome as you take on the next steps. Thanks for stepping up for the city of Minneapolis.
All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll direct the clerk to receive and file those comments. Items 2 through 4 are on the consent agenda. Item number 2 is part of the appointed boards and commissions administrative reforms, and today's action is reestablishing and approving bylaws and procedural rules for the Bicycle Advisory Committee, Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council. I will note that we will be seeing more of these in the coming weeks and months as these boards start adopting them as part of the reform process. Item number 3 is authorizing an amendment to the Community Commission on Police Oversight Bylaws. And item number 4 is accepting a low bid for City Hall Council Chamber security upgrade. This item would normally be in the Administration and Enterprise Oversight Committee, but as it is a time-sensitive item, I agree to allow it on today's Committee of the Whole agenda. Members, are there any discussions or questions on these items? All right, seeing no comments or questions, I'll move approval of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it, and that motion carries. Before we move on to our discussion items, we'll address item number 5. This item was postponed from our last December meeting. Staff have asked to postpone it one more cycle to the January 28th Committee of the Whole meeting. If there are no objections, this item is postponed to January 28th. Seeing no objections, that is postponed. Since the next 2 items on the agenda are related, we will address them together. We have Clerk Casey Carl, who will summarize the 2024 Council Tracking Report and give us an initial report for 2025. Thanks, Clerk Carl.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. As noted, my name is Casey Carl. I have the privilege of serving as clerk for the city of Minneapolis. I'm pleased to be before you today to present 2 reports, as the chair indicated. The first, which is agenda item number 6, is a final report for the council's 2024 session. The second, shown as agenda item number 7, is an initial report for 2025. And that report identifies those items that are already in queue, with approximately 330 days remaining in this term. Because this year marks the end of an elective term, those matters that are undisposed at the end of the year will automatically expire. It should be no surprise to council that 2024 was a busy and productive year. I expect this year will be similar in terms of the formal actions that we track in these reports. As you know, these reports are intended to provide a transparent way to track the specific actions through the legislative process. Before I get into numbers, I'd like to express my appreciation to my team in the clerk's office, especially our chief clerk, Ken Daler, who's seated at the dais with you, for their diligence in pulling, reviewing, and validating this data through multiple revisions. Their work on those reports enables this kind of deeper dive into the city's work, which contributes to increased public accessibility and accountability. I also want to note we have available for questions at the end members of the mayor's cabinet and department heads who may be available either here or in the adjoining anteroom. They can respond to any specific questions on items that might be included in these reports. If it pleases the committee, I'd recommend that we complete the presentation before taking up any specific questions that might be on either the 2024 summary or 2025 initial report. So the report is divided into sections that correspond with the specific types of actions that we track. As shown on this slide, that includes ordinances, enterprise policies, legislative directives, and staff directives. Together, these 4 types of actions constitute the bulk of the council's legislative and policymaking functions. They also encompass the highest and the most important types of actions that City Council can take. This slide shows our data sources. As you can see, we are primarily extracting data from the Legislative Information Management System, or LIMS. This provides the file and official act numbers, subject matters, and official status, all of which are contained in the first 3 columns from left to right on the screen and in the reports. The 4th column on the far right includes commentary from both council members and departments that provide additional context or explanations about various items and their status within the legislative process. The clerks have embedded links to our files and acts and meeting agendas and more to provide a fuller context as well as access. And we've also included cross-references between categories, for example, between ordinances and legislative directives. So I'll start, as I noted, by providing a summary of Council's 2024 session. That reporting period covers all actions that were taken between January 1 and December 31 of last year. As you know, 2024 was the first year in a 2-year term. Thus, all the items that were unresolved at the end of 2024 carried forward into the current year, and we'll review those matters in the second half of this report. To be clear, this first report, which covers the 2024 session, is linked under agenda item number 6 on today's agenda. So here on this slide, I'm providing a statistical summary of those actions taken in 2024. From that snapshot, you can see Council had a total of 1,449 official acts in its 2024 session. That breaks down to 47 ordinances that were enacted, 449 resolutions that were adopted, and 953 actions that were approved. In this context, action, that last category, is any official action not processed as an ordinance or as a resolution. So, for example, that would include all contracts and agreements, appointments, and other types of formal actions that are usually of an administrative nature. You can see in the lower right-hand corner on this slide that we created a total of 1,408 legislative files last year. Typically, 1 file is created for each official action, but that's not an absolute rule. So you can see that we had 1,449 official acts, we had 1,408 legislative files. Obviously, some files had more actions associated with them than others. An example of that is our annual budget process, where several resolutions are related to the budget and constitute what we would call the action on the budget, and all of those resolutions, each of them separate acts, are encompassed in one legislative file. I'll break down these numbers in the next few slides. So we'll start with ordinances and final action taken in 2024. As you can see, the total number of ordinances that were introduced last year, as well as the total number of ordinances that had a final dispositive action in 2024, are shown at the top 2 bullets. This information is also covered on pages 1 and 2 of the written report for reference. As you can see, a total of 48 proposals were introduced last year, and of that total volume, 13 proposals were enacted as ordinances and were codified. There are 2 proposals which were enacted as ordinances and are still awaiting codification. There are 2 ordinances related to transportation network companies which were preempted by state legislation, and a total of 28 ordinances that were enacted but that were not codified. So let me start by that last group, ordinances that are enacted but not codified. Where the city enacts an ordinance that is legislative in character, and by that phrase legislative in character, I mean an official act which is the equivalent of a local law, it is then codified in the city's Code of Ordinances. The Code of Ordinances is essentially the compilation of the city's municipal laws, similar to the compilation of state statutes. There are some actions that the council takes, however, that are not legislative in character, but they are required by law to be made in the form of an ordinance. As examples, actions that include zoning text amendments and changes in the city's salary schedules. These are purely administrative in nature and would normally be processed as resolutions, except for the fact that the law requires those actions to be done by ordinance. So as a consequence, these are ordinances that are enacted by council, but they are not codified. We typically do a large number of uncodified ordinances each year. In 2024, there were a total of 28 uncodified ordinances. Those ordinance numbers are, however, reflected in the total number of enacted ordinances shown on this slide. There isn't a separate introduction for each of those, so that explains the discrepancy between ordinances introduced and ordinances enacted in the year. The clerks have provided some comparative data for your reference. As a very simple comparison, you can see that in 2024, council introduced a total of 48 proposals for ordinances, but there were 29 additional introductions made last year that didn't get resolved in 2024, and so they carried over into 2025. Combined, that means that the council had 77 ordinance introductions in 2024 in a single year. And when compared to the 74 that were made in 2022 and 2023 combined, you can see why when I said in November the council's output in 2024 was significantly more. In fact, that pace has spilled over into the current year, as we'll talk about when I get to 2025's numbers. This slide shows similar data for enterprise policies, which is shown on pages 2 and 3 of the written report. As you can see, a total of 14 proposals for enterprise policies were introduced last year, and of that, a total of 11 policies were adopted in final form. The output in this category is reduced from the 2022-2023 term, as you can see on the comparative data at the bottom of the slide, and I think in large part that reflects the implementation of the city's new governing structure. The mayor, as chief executive officer, would be expected to take the lead on policymaking largely focused internally on departments. I'd expect that this category continues to be lower in future reporting periods as a result. However, as the governing body, there are still opportunities for council to set priorities and to guide the overall operation of the city enterprise, which is captured as an example in these enterprise policies adopted in 2024. Of the total proposals in 2024, 11 were adopted, 1 was vetoed by the mayor, and that veto was sustained by council, and 1 proposal failed to secure support to move out of committee. There was 1 policy in queue at the end of 2024 that remained unresolved and carried forward into the current year. And here again, as noted, there is some comparative data for you between last year and then the current or the previous 2-year term. This slide reflects legislative directives in 2024, reflected on pages 3 and 4 of the written report. Legislative directives, as you know, are formal requests by the council to the mayor for support for the council's legislative policymaking and oversight functions. When approved, the mayor assigns that request to one or more departments in the administration for response. The policy on legislative directives is intended to address the separation of powers in government structure while providing the means for productive collaboration between council and administration with respect to the council's official functions. In 2024, a total of 42 legislative directives were adopted, all of which were approved by the mayor or which were deemed approved without formal action by the mayor. Of that total, 17 directives were closed out last year with responses or reports from departments. And that's a closure rate of approximately 40%. There were 25 legislative directives that were still open at the end of last year, and those carry forward into this year. And in the majority of cases, you'll see that the notes column reflects active collaboration between the council authors and the administration to advance the work that's contained in those directives. And of course, these numbers don't include informal requests or inquiries that individual council members make to the administration or to specific departments throughout the year. Again, the clerks have provided some comparative data showing the volume of directives for 2024 compared to the prior 2-year term. And as you can see, that volume has slightly increased. And again, I think that's to be expected as a result of the change in government structure. Finally, this slide shows data on the number of staff directives that were adopted in 2024. Staff directives are essentially directions by the council to its own staff in the legislative department, separate from requests for support that are directed to the administration. In 2024, there were a total of 33 staff directives introduced and approved. And of that total, 17 were closed with responses or reports provided back or with no response being required. As with legislative directives, you can see from the comparative data here that there was an increase in the number of staff directives last year when compared to the prior 2-year period. And again, I think that this is to be expected and will be a trend that we will see carry forward in 2025 and future years. The increase in both legislative directives and staff directives isn't a negative thing and is not or should not be seen as a negative reflection on council. In fact, it's simply City Council doing its job as the legislative body of the city. Through its directives, the council requests support from the administration or from its own staff for its official functions. Individual council members lack legal authority to take actions or give directions. All authority of council is vested in the body itself. And so these types of actions, directions both to the administration, to the staff and the legislative department, are how the council takes actions on those types of directions. So seeing an increase in the number of directives to the administration and to the legislative department should be seen as city council operating correctly and effectively as a body. And I do expect to see similar trends this year and into years into the future. That completes my report summarizing the actions from last year, Mr. Chair. Next, I'll turn to matters that carried over into the current year. This will be reflected in agenda item number 7 on the agenda, and it has a separate report that was included in your agenda packets. The purpose of the initial report is to level set expectations with policymakers as we begin the final year in this 2-year term. As you'll see, the queue is already quite full, and I have every confidence that the council and administration will together see another very full year ahead. So we start with ordinances again. I noted that in 2024, council enacted a total of 47 ordinances. In addition, I said there were 29 ordinances that were introduced, but where no final action was taken by the end of last year. Those introductions then have carried forward automatically to this year. These are listed on pages 1 through 4 of the January report included in your briefing materials. And as I stated previously, the status in the legislative process is reflected in the 3rd column, but it's in that notes section on the far right column where most of the information about status and context is provided. That information comes from council members who are the authors of these items and from the departments working on them. Happily, as you can see in most cases, there is work underway to bring forward these proposals in the first quarter of the year or to have reports back within the first half of 2025. We'll have more updates to share about these items when we present our first quarterly report at the end of March. In looking at the comparative data here at the bottom of the slide, I'll only note that we have 29 introductions in queue at this stage as we begin the year. And that's about half the total number of ordinances that were enacted in 2024. So again, as I noted, this is a high volume of work, and I think that further confirms my prediction that 2025 will be another very busy year that pushes the enterprise in terms of its capacity to respond to council. As shown on this slide, there's only one enterprise policy that carried over from 2024. That's listed on page 4 of the printed report. You can see this is about the Safe and Thriving Communities report and the plan for safety beyond policing. That matter was referred to the Council's Public Health and Safety Committee and is set for discussion at that body's meeting in the next regular cycle on Wednesday, January 22nd at 1:30. To the best of my knowledge, there are no other proposals for enterprise policies in queue at this time. This slide shows the number of pending legislative directives that carried forward from 2024, which you can see is 25. These are listed on pages 4 through 6 in the printed report in your briefing materials. Of course, I'm happy to report that my office closed the first of these directives this year, thanks to Councilmember Wansley. There was a presentation at her Administration Enterprise Oversight Committee last week with an overview about how the city receives and responds to data requests. There was a very comprehensive report that was offered by Assistant City Clerk Christian Rummelhoff, who leads the city's Information Governance Division that includes the team responsible for centralized management of data requests. Additionally, I'm happy to note that of the 25 legislative directives carried over from last year, 12 have initial report back dates that are set within the first quarter of this year, and that accounts for about 48% of all of the carryover volume. And then we also know that there are a substantial number that are teed up for presentation and reports within the first 3 months. Beyond that, there are at least 8 pending legislative directives that have report back dates in the second quarter of the year. So combined with the first 12 and the second 8, we have about 32% of all of those legislative directives that have carried over have report back dates already assigned to them. And obviously all of that means we're going to have to very carefully manage committee schedules. So to committee chairs and council leadership, I'll say it will be important for us to work very carefully on scheduling those matters so that we can accommodate all of that work if we are to stay on course this year. And then finally, this slide shows that there are 16 staff directives that carried over from 2024 into 2025. These are reflected on pages 6 and 7 of your printed report. Of that total, I'll note that 4 have report back dates in the first quarter of this year. There are an additional 7 that have report back dates in the second quarter or beyond. So about 69% of those total staff directives have identified report back dates already set. That completes my review of the items in queue at the start of the current year, Mr. Chair. Next, I'll discuss the timing of upcoming council tracking reports. But before I do, I'd like to take the opportunity to point out that data from 2024, as well as the initial level set for 2025 that I just provided, shows that there has been productive collaboration between council and administration. And in my comments, I have credited the City Council with enacting a significant number of ordinances and taking action on a number of enterprise policies and directives. And the council does deserve credit for those things. But I should also point out that those successes are shared successes between the council and the administration. It's a fact that every official act of council reflects the input, advice, contributions, and work of the departments in our administration, and every ordinance that's enacted by council requires the administration to implement, enforce, and manage its provisions. The same with every policy, the same with every directive. So these reports are not just reports about council's accomplishments, but really should be seen as the accomplishments of the enterprise working together. And I think that the community needs to hear that. As we head into a city election year, I especially think the community deserves to know that its city is working and is accomplishing important and big things for its residents. And as the data shows, we work best as a city when we work together. To be clear, I know that every member on the dais seated here today knows that. And I also know that our department heads know that as well. But sometimes the pressing demands and the needs of the moment mean that we focus on things that probably aren't working as well, or where improvements could be made, even while the majority of the city is doing great work in a professional, effective, and efficient manner. It's also true that occasionally the drama of political theater means we miss the opportunity to highlight the truly incredible work that the city's 4,000 plus employees do day in and day out to maintain a great community. Council knows this, and I'm not pointing out those things for any purpose other than to say Council knows I'm also a very natural critic. I don't hand out compliments lightly, but standing here at the dais, I feel compelled to say for the 25 departments and the 4,000 people who work there that they do good work every day. I know you know that. This is an opportunity for us to reflect that. This isn't just council's work, it's the city's work. So finally, this slide then shows the anticipated timeline for future reports. We envision these reports to be given at the end of each quarter, so the next expected report will be at the end of March, and I am targeting, with your help, Mr. Chair, the committee's regular meeting for March 25th for that purpose. That completes my prepared comments, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to stand for any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you, Clerk Carl. I'll first pass it on to President Payne, and I'll keep on looking at the queue.
Thank you, Chair Chavez, and thank you, Mr. Clerk, for putting this work into context. I think there is a lot of narrative that gets built about our city and about our government that doesn't align with this data. This data reflects high functionality, right? And I think one of the things I'm really looking forward to is not just being able to demonstrate the data of the work output that this body does, but the outcomes for our community and making that connection. And so I think that we should be looking at this as the start of a much more robust foundation around being able to demonstrate to our community how their local government can impact their lives. And I think that getting the ordinances passed is really good work. Demonstrating that those ordinances are changing people's lives is the next frontier of this work. So I'm looking forward to the kinds of partnerships that we can have with the administration to demonstrate that impact.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with you, and as a systems engineer and process thinker, I know that you'll be very interested to help participate in how we can close those loops for the community.
Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Clerk, I appreciate this report. I'm not sure I can remember a compliment you've given me in the 10 years we've worked together, so that was a very accurate statement. But in seriousness, I agree with Council President Payne. The data is really important, but outcomes reporting is the next frontier and is ideal. Importantly, this kind of a presentation makes me reflect that the work of this body would not be possible without the work of dedicated city staff, whether that's department heads or frontline staff. And so I want to point out my gratitude for their partnership in this work. The data shows that this is coming back to us in all of the many things we ask them to, and their commitment to our residents across our city is pretty clear. I've heard a lot, and I just need to say this out loud, I've heard a lot of thanking other council members and frankly self-congratulating across the dais throughout this term, and I do that too. But council, and this is not directed at anyone in particular, we are all guilty of this at times. Council often seems to credit ourselves for all the things that are evolving or going well in our city. Yet I think we are quick to blame the administration and our staff when things go wrong. And that's not fair, and that's not honest. That's not fair, and that's not honest. The truth is, our work and our accomplishments are shared between the council and the administration. And I need to call that out because it's only with the professionals in these departments that we're able to deliver city services and impact the lives of people across the city. Our city does better when we work together, so I just wanted to make it especially clear that today and this presentation to me should thank our administration and to all of our employees who have helped us to accomplish these kinds of outcomes for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Palmisano. Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Clerk Carl. And I echo all the comments that have been said thus far, including all of the comments that Councilmember Palmisano shared. But I wanted to just take this opportunity to reflect and thank you and your team, because this report reflects a tremendous amount of work that the clerk's team does day in and day out to make sure that the actions, the legislative directives, all of the work that the council does creates work for you and your team, and it's been outstanding, and this report reflects that. So I wanted to just take a moment to offer that compliment, though you have not given me very many compliments either. No, I'm just kidding, totally kidding. And really appreciate the work that you and your team do each and every day.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you. And Clerk Carl, thank you so much for not only your leadership, but your team is just doing a great job. And when you see the numbers that were asked of them, it's very hard work, and I'm very grateful for that. And your wisdom is well appreciated too, because when we succeed as a team all together. And when there are failures, we all share in that failure. So thank you for bringing that up as well. And keep up the good work. We're going to have a great year here in 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vice President Chuck Tai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clerk Carl, thank you for this presentation. I think I recall having a conversation with you perhaps prior to the end of the year just around, the tremendous amount of work that comes out of our clerk's office and how it is all public facing in nature. And the clerk's office, provides core services like, through our elections and voter services division that interfaces with community members every day. And so I think you and your office understand in a really unique way that our residents in our city are always asking us to do more, do better, better meet their needs. I've never once been to a community meeting where no one had any feedback about anything we could be improving on. And I think that, it's a little bit of a joke, but, it's true. And I think the pace of the work that we see in reflecting on the first year of this term is reflective of the demands and the needs of our residents. And I feel really grateful to have been a part of that with all of you, all colleagues here on the dais. But, as you pointed out, the 25 departments and the 4,000 plus employees here at the city of Minneapolis in meeting our residents' needs, as is our job. And I am excited about what this upcoming year brings. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you. And a nice reminder, today's election day for some of us, so go vote.
Vice Chair Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I actually did not mean to put myself in queue, but I will certainly take the opportunity. I appreciate all the gratitude to our clerks. I know that this council tracking report is a new tool, and it takes a lot of time coordinating between each office, talking to the administration, talking to attorneys, really modeling the bringing together that you're talking about. I hear all of us echoing, and just appreciate it. I'm looking forward to March to see what we accomplish. And I'll just note today, this tool is really helpful because I know that an item that I'm waiting back on, which is the pollution reduction legislative directive, had a really good conversation with our city staff team about how we can better work together, because that legislative directive is unique in and of itself. It's like creates a work group model. And we're trying to figure out steps to make sure that we get the report out to committees and do the work that we need to complete the work. And I look forward to seeing a lot of the stuff that's in queue checked off and new legislative directives that are entered in. And I'm always, as a member of this body, I'm always here to help support the work of our clerks and our administration to just get the work done. So thank you. This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also wanted to echo what my colleagues are saying about our incredible city staff, our legislative department that worked really hard to get us to the point where we are today. But I also want to thank our own council aides. I know that they are the ones that help us engage with our community. They help work with us in drafting policies, ordinances, directives. They work really hard to put the values of our constituents into a piece of paper and pass it through the city council. So I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge them here today as well. With that, thank you, Clerk Carl, to you and the entire department for bringing this presentation forward. We look forward to the next one. And seeing no further discussion, I'll direct the clerk to receive and file those reports. Item number 8 is part of our settlement agreement and consent decree oversight subcommittee. So I will now turn that meeting over to President Payne as chair of that committee.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. Item number 8 is a presentation from the City Attorney's Office on the consent decree negotiated between the U.S. Department of Justice and the city. I'll ask staff to give that presentation.
Yeah, so you can speak here. There you go.
Council President, council members, Kristen Anderson, City Attorney. I'm doing double duty both on the dais and out here. And with me is Adam Szymanski, Assistant City Attorney from my office. And we're going to very high level go through a presentation of what's new in terms of what we've negotiated with the Department of Justice. As you know, we already have a settlement agreement on police reform with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. The work implementing that agreement has been underway and ongoing for the last year and a half or so. As you all know, we also have a monitor in place, Effective Law Enforcement for All, that's giving us lots and lots of technical assistance and is monitoring our progress. But we now have this new development of terms negotiated with the Department of Justice. And many of the terms are very similar to those in the Department of Human Rights settlement agreement. Some are identical. Some cover the same ground but go a little bit further, and then there are some provisions that are really, truly new. So what we want to try to do in this presentation is focus a little bit more on things that I would put in the new bucket. Again, maybe not completely new, but new requirements. So Adam is going to present on a few slides, then I'll jump back and present on a few slides, and then happy to take questions. Also happy to take questions as we're talking. So however, Council President, you'd like to handle that. But for now, I will turn it over to Adam.
Good afternoon, Council President, Council members. I'm going to begin talking about the community engagement section. Kind of the foundational thing that comes along with this section is the implementation and focus on community-oriented and problem-oriented policing principles. As perhaps the name suggests, it has to do with examining community priorities and approaching problems in the community with an analytical method. This will also focus on familiarity with the geographic area, and it also provides a 45-day public comment period on certain buckets, certain policy buckets for MPD, including fair and impartial policing, First Amendment, and use of force. The next section I'd like to talk about is the use of force section. Kind of the big ticket item here, I would say, is the additional force review that's been implemented, or that's part of this consent decree. There are different force levels, different levels of reportable force, and depending on what that level of reportable force is will dictate what level of scrutiny, what level of additional scrutiny a use of force will receive. There are also a number of specific policies for use of force, including how MPD will interact with youth, and there are other youth-focused provisions of this consent decree. The next section I'd like to talk about is fair and impartial policing. I would say the highlight of this section here is that MPD will create a plan to assess how enforcement strategies address public safety concerns and whether they generate significant racial disparities. Along with that are certain monitoring with and how we collect data related to those, related to that idea. There's also a section on body-worn camera, which will change to a 60-second pre-activation window from what was originally a 30-second window. That is consistent with what the State Patrol does right now. That brings me to First Amendment. This is an entirely new section from what was in MDHR. What this section does, it provides protections for First Amendment activities, prohibits retaliation, provides certain protections for journalists, and protections for people who are interacting with MPD or people that are observing MPD.
The next section I'd like to highlight is, again, a new section dealing with people with behavioral health disabilities. In the MDHR settlement agreement, our behavioral crisis response is addressed in really one paragraph. So this is a section that is a really comprehensive section on alternatives to policing and educating police all to the benefit of dealing more effectively with situations where individuals are having behavioral health crisis responses. So the provisions build on our existing mobile crisis response and then kind of go from there. The provisions require not only a mobile crisis response, but talk about joint response in situations where there is truly a law enforcement issue, but also behavioral health crisis going on at the same time, and sort of who's in command of those situations on the ground. And also talks about requirements, and this is, again, very new, requirements for 911 and additional training for 911 call takers and dispatchers on how to deal with individuals with behavioral health crisis situations. Additional new positions, voluntary, I guess assignments maybe is the right word, for those call takers and dispatchers that want to have even more training and can be categorized as crisis response specialists. That when they're available and can take calls, they have that extra level of specialization to be able to handle individuals with behavioral health needs. And then on the MPD side, again, additional training for all MPD officers on how to handle behavioral crisis situations. And then on a voluntary basis, special crisis intervention trained specialist police officers that are going to get that much more training and that much more qualification to deal with those situations. And so kind of the idea is that when they are available, the priority would be to send those folks out to a call that has those sorts of needs. But all MPD officers will get that higher level of training in addition to those enhanced specialists. And then the whole section really talks about a very cross-functional approach. So we will have MPD officers training with the 911 call takers and dispatchers, who will also be training with fire and also be training with EMT, all to share knowledge and expertise. So everyone's kind of knowledge and skills in dealing with mental health crises will be hopefully next level. The new provisions, very similar to the MDHR settlement agreement, have a whole section on misconduct and accountability. I'm going to kind of take a step back and kind of explain again how our system coming out of the MDHR settlement agreement works in terms of where a complaint gets made and how it gets dealt with. And that hasn't changed under these new requirements, but there are some enhancements. So essentially, there are really two investigative entities. There's the Office of Police Conduct Review, which is in the Civil Rights Department, and then the Internal Affairs Division, which is in the Minneapolis Police Department. And depending on who the complainant is, depends on where the complaint goes. So if it's an external complaint by a member of the public, those complaints go to the Office of Police Conduct Review. If it's an internal complaint by any city employee, then those complaints go to the Internal Affairs Division. We also have this first filed rule that there are sometimes circumstances where we get more than one complaint out of a particular circumstance, and if the first complaint that was received is a citizen complaint and later on there are employee complaints, whichever investigative entity got that complaint to begin with keeps that. So there's some continuity, and we don't have, one investigative entity starting an investigation and then having to hand it off. With the DOJ requirements, we now are also clear that members of the Community Commission on Police Oversight, if they were to have a complaint, that actually goes to the Office of Police Conduct Review. So we've now assigned a place for those sorts of complaints to come in. So, as I said, these two investigative entities, they don't collaborate, they don't decide together on what to investigate or not. They both have standard operating procedures that are actually quite similar to each other. It was very important for our monitor that we have very consistent processes. But the complaint comes in, and then whichever investigative entity has the complaint then continues on through the process. In the DOJ requirements, there are some provisions that would allow for dismissal prior to investigation, and they're really quite limited. One is dismissal for basically failure to state a claim. So, even if this thing happened, it doesn't violate any policy, or actually, the officer at issue was not an MPD officer. Those would be a couple of reasons why dismissal would happen. There's also an opportunity for very low-level violations that at that OPCR director or IA commander level could send those off to be dealt with by the supervisor. And then there is a provision for expedited disposition where essentially the officer admits guilt, says, yes, I did that thing, and accepts disciplinary punishment. In every other circumstance, however, the complaint then goes through to a full investigation, again, in whichever arm of the investigated units the complaint came in. After those investigations are complete, they're reviewed by supervisors, and then under the DOJ requirements, the commander of IA or the director of OPCR makes a recommendation as to whether policies have been violated. It's just a recommendation, but it's intended to give some more guidance to the review panel, and there's basically four conclusions. It could be substantiated, unsubstantiated, exonerated, and one other. But there are definitions in the DOJ requirements that explain that. But again, it's intended to provide non-binding, but some more guidance to the review panel. So once that process is done, then the investigation, all of the materials, the summary report done by the investigator, and the recommendations by the IA commander or OPCR director, respectively, go to the review panel, and the review panel is still the constitution of the review panel is actually not addressed in DOJ. The fact of a review panel is, but DOJ does not say how many people it needs to be or what the composition, but our own ordinance does, and our own ordinance talks about a 5-person review panel, 2 sworn members, and 3 civilian members, and those 3 civilian members come from the Community Commission on Police Oversight. And so the review panel then gets all of those materials. They meet. They look at all of they collaborate or deliberate, actually, together, and then they come up with a recommendation on, again, whether or not policy has been violated using those same, substantiated, unsubstantiated, those same definitions. And then if they find that the allegations are substantiated, then they are to make a recommendation about whether there's a range of discipline that's in accordance with the disciplinary matrix. And then that all goes to the chief, ultimately, for the chief's final determination. So this all works very, very similar between the 2 agreements. I would say that kind of the new thing that I think is maybe of most interest, at least to me, in the misconduct section in DOJ is more tracking. So that when complaints come in, they're actually going to be classified. They're going to be buckets of classifications, and those classifications are going to be entered into the system. So then we can track complaints sort of by category, and once we get our data management systems really solidified and have all of this data put into the systems, then we're going to be able to pull out anonymized data so that we can sort of by allegation be able to say, we have 3 use of force complaints in the last year, and 2 of them resulted in suspensions, and 1 of them resulted in a termination, and 2 of them were aggrieved, and et cetera. So we're going to be able to pull out from the system numerical data that will allow us to provide a lot more information to the public because they're de-identified. So that kind of all of those requirements in DOJ will help us to be able to have more communication about what's going on in the misconduct space. Then with respect to policy development, Adam had already touched on this to some degree. There's going to be a notice and comment period. Under DOJ, it's a notice and comment period for every policy that's required under the decree, not just the buckets of policies. The buckets of policies have a 45-day comment period, but every other policy has a 30-day comment period. Training, also addressed in DOJ. Probably the biggest two features is that it calls for a civilian training director. So we have that civilian expertise in the training, as well as officer expertise. And then there's a specific prohibition in the field training officer space that if an individual is under investigation for a serious policy violation, they are not eligible to serve as a field training officer. Some new provisions with respect to supervision. In DOJ, we will be required to have what's called unity of command and span of control, which essentially means that supervisors will be generally scheduled for the same schedules as the officers that they supervise. And there will be a supervisor to supervisee ratio of 1 supervisor per 8 supervisees at maximum. And having that consistency in supervisor for, this requires that span of control for a year. So every year there's new bidding that goes on, but for the course of a year, officers will be consistently staffed with their supervisor, a consistent supervisor, so that should help support officers and also enable supervisors to effectively and closely supervise. Some provisions on off-duty. In particular, there will have to be pre-approval for use of city equipment, and subordinate officers will not be allowed to schedule superior officers for off-duty work. For performance evaluations, and promotions, very similar to MDHR. I think probably the one significant specific call out is that similar to field training officers, officers will not be eligible for promotion if they have a pending serious allegation of policy violation. Recruitment and hiring is dealt with specifically in DOJ. There's not a specific call out for this in MDHR, but under DOJ, the city will be required to develop and implement a robust recruitment, hiring, and retention program, complete with a recruitment and hiring plan. There will be annual assessment of the effectiveness of these hiring, recruitment, and retention efforts, and really the idea is to have really broad, robust outreach in the recruitment process. And then finally, data management, not that different from MDHR. I think the most important differences really come around, again, that data tracking and robust use of our electronic systems so that we can pull out de-identified data for reporting purposes. So I know that was a quick overview. The document is about 170 pages long, so this just scratched the surface, but these are things that, again, I thought might be of greater interest because they are different in some way than what's in MDHR.
Thank you for that presentation. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, President Payne, and thank you for the presentation. Attorney Anderson, I was wondering about something in one of the first slides about the youth interaction, and wondering if you could go in a little more detail about what the consent decree says about interactions with youth, specifically the rule of no handcuffing minors 14 and under. Was this in the MDHR agreement as well? How does the DOJ consent decree differ from what was in the MDHR agreement? And also, I got this question from constituents. What tools will the police department have to implement or to apprehend a minor who is under 14 who may be committing a crime other than handcuffing? And then how will they tell the age? How are they going to be trained to know the age of the person that they're trying to apprehend?
Thank you, Council President, Council Member. Let me provide a little more detail on the section, and then I'll try to answer your questions. If I haven't gotten to anything, please just let me know. So the interactions with youth section prioritizes alternatives to arrest for youth. And it provides what it will provide is specific policies are required to be developed and protocols for dealing with these encounters with youth. And then it will also require training on those new policies. So that's kind of the general layout for that. In terms of how officers will be required to identify whether someone's a youth, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the standard was what a reasonable officer would know the individual to be. So it's kind of one of those legal standards where the officer makes an assessment and there'll be some look at whether that was a reasonable determination. What I will say in terms of it, there are some overlaps with MDHR in requiring to have and train to train for specific policies. I believe it was not as long in terms of there was maybe only a couple paragraphs in the settlement agreement where this is, again, not pages and pages, but there are some more paragraphs provided on here. Certainly, if you look at the use of force section, lays out the standard for how use of force should be, how force can be used in a certain situation. The interactions with use section sort of further refines that for these specific instances, and like I said, prioritizes alternatives to arrest. For the training itself, the consent decree would require more training than what the settlement agreement provides. Councilmember Cashman, is there anything I did not address in that you would like further detail on?
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess I would like to know what these alternatives to arrest are, how descriptive that is, and then if it's not as descriptive, how will the policy be developed around the alternatives to arrest?
Sure. So, so the consent agreement contemplates things like warnings or citations as alternatives to arrests. So I think that answers that question. In terms of how the policies develop, the consent decree contemplates a collaborative period. So there'd be a collaboration between the city and DOJ, sort of like an informal process of okay, here's the policies that we're thinking about. There'd be some back and forth on that. And then there would be a formal submission to the monitor and to and DOJ, at which time there would be a period of time where they would have to comment on that. And then the policy would either be, presumably, let's say the policy is then adopted after comment from the monitor and feedback from the DOJ. They would then implement that policy, and this kind of gets into how compliance is measured. You would implement the policy for interactions with youth. In this instance, there would be that training on it, and then there would be, as City Attorney Anderson got into, that accountability section, the misconduct accountability. There would be monitoring for holding people accountable to those new policies and training.
Okay, thank you. And that process from start to finish takes about how long for this whole, development of the policy, comment from the Department of Justice and from the monitor, adoption of the new policy and implementation with training? Do you have an estimation of how long that takes?
Council President, Council Member, I don't know that I have an estimate how long that would necessarily take, but we've talked about pieces of it that have certain timeline requirements. City Attorney Anderson mentioned, for example, that if it's just a normal policy required by the decree, that has a 30-day public comment period. So that would be factored into this. There's also kind of the submission, the formal submission and review period I mentioned, which was 30 days as well. Then there would be, perhaps the need to develop the training or something along those lines. So I all that to illustrate is that I don't have an estimate of how long that process might take, but it is certainly a very involved process.
Okay, thanks. And this will just be a question for you, President Payne, as the implementation subcommittee chair. Is what ideas do you have for like project management and making sure that, because I understand that this is a long process from start to finish, and I think without oversight of implementation and the steps along the way, I'm really concerned with how long it will take us to implement the consent decree.
Council President, council member, so, I also don't, off the top of my head, remember the timelines. There are timelines in both the settlement agreement and in the consent decree, but really, this is why we have the monitor. The monitor is, part of their job is to provide technical assistance and keep the ball rolling and keep us on time with the deadlines. So we've got lots of project management, both internal and with the monitor going on throughout. I just don't happen to know the deadlines off the top of my head, but one of the tasks that the monitor undertook under MDHR was to create an annual implementation plan, and the document is like breaks everything down into bite-sized pieces and assigns due dates and all of those things. That is publicly available. Again, I don't remember all of these. It's a huge spreadsheet, and some of the new things with DOJ haven't obviously necessarily been factored in, but a lot of what is covered in DOJ is very overlapping with the work that's already underway with MDHR. And, as we were negotiating with DOJ, we weren't just in a silo and just kept that information to ourselves. We made sure that the implementation folks were aware, these are extra things, and they've been building those things into some of the policies that they're drafting under MDHR, so that it's not starting from scratch with the DOJ requirements. Some of it has already been taken into account, and a lot of it is just like adding on to the work that's already been done. And so, one of the challenges, of course, will be, putting these two things together and figuring out like what else, and the monitor's going to have some work to do to kind of assemble both of these things together. But so much of the work that's already been done is totally applicable to DOJ as well. So this is not, kind of halting us in our tracks by any means. This work has been ongoing for a while, and will keep on going.
Thanks. I'll just reiterate my emphasis on ensuring like timeliness of progress reports from the monitor, which we're already, pushing for the soonest possible year one progress report in front of the community, in front of council. And I want to make sure that the monitor is also incentivized to move as quickly as possible, the same way that we are, as our taxpayers are, paying for all of this. And I want to see us implement the consent decree within 5 years, not 15. And so how are we pushing for the soonest possible timeline on these measures? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to call on Councilmember Wansley next. I'll just speak to the second half of this legislative directive. It is asking for quarterly updates, and I'm not sure if Councilmember Wansley was going to speak to that, but
I was.
Great. So I will recognize Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, President Payne. This actually builds upon our prior presentation from Clerk Carl, where thanks to this body passing this legislative directive, we are now able to get regular updates on both the MDHR settlement agreement and now the DOJ consent decree. And ideally, I know we're in conversations with President Payne, but it would be great to figure out how we can integrate updates from ALIFA and their compliance processes around their implementation plan into updates that's going to be provided by the city attorney's office and whoever else is part of the implementation team from the city side. So I think that is absolutely the space through this legislative directive and this subcommittee where this body can continuously be updated on the progress and, continue to relay that information to our constituents and the public as a whole. But I absolutely agree with you. I've also have fussed at President Payne too around how can we get LIFA before this body and give a presentation themselves directly? I don't see any reason as to why they cannot, especially as they have received $1.5 million of taxpayers' resources, and per the terms and conditions of this consent decree, if they accept it, could receive an additional $750,000 for taking on the DOJ if they wanted to as well, to monitor this one. But I also had some additional questions if I could proceed with that. Awesome. So I did want to ask more so around how this relates to this, and I mean the consent decree, to CCPO, because I think there's been lots of questions that I received also this past week. A former CCPO member resigned and wrote a pretty public letter to the editor piece around concerns of how they feel now the consent decree kind of weakens the powers of the CCPO, and just wanted to give clarity either to members of the commission or the public around how does actually the consent decree either relate or complements the work of the commission.
Council President, Council Member. So I think that the consent decree really complements. I'll address kind of the specific issue, but there is a short section on the CCPO in DOJ, and it really talks about ensuring that the CCPO has sufficient resources through OPCR to do their work, which I think is a benefit to the body to have those provisions in there. But I think the specific issue was around actually the review panels. So it's not the CCPO as a body, but their participation in review panels, and the 3 civilians and 2 sworn review panels. And I think that the concern was the fact that the review panels will be getting a recommendation that's sustained, unsustained from the OPCR director and from the IA commander. That the concern was, like, does that take any authority away from the review panel? It doesn't. And really the reason for those provisions was to, frankly, in a lot of ways, the complaint that I know I've heard, and I think that DOJ had heard as well, is that, the civilians are coming at this without that police background, and you've got 2 sworn people, and there's too much opportunity for the sworn folks to sort of take away the conversation. And so the idea of having these recommendations, and they are only recommendations from the OPCR director and the IA commander, is to level the playing field a little bit more, to give even the civilian members a little bit more context of, what do our policies mean, what do they not mean. But again, they are only recommendations, and the review panel does not have to go with the recommendation. What they are required to do is, regardless, they have to explain their decision making, and if they deviate from the recommendation, that's totally fine. They should explain it so that we, have that documentation as it gets passed on to the chief. But it really was intended to provide a little bit more help, frankly, for the civilians as they do that work in the review panel. But it is not binding.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity. And then I did want to get a little bit more information and context specifically on provision 134. This is getting into the nitty gritty. There's currently a requirement due to the consent decree that MPD must not obscure their identifiers or badges during First Amendment events, so relating to that portion. I just wanted to know what policy was in place prior to this regarding MPDs basically not being able to do that, or if there was a policy in place prior to this.
Council President, Council Member. So I will have to admit, I don't know whether MPD did or didn't have a policy consistent or different. What I will highlight is that, and we even addressed this kind of at the beginning of the document, just because a provision is in the consent decree does not indicate that means that MPD doesn't already have a consistent policy. The way that we kind of approach these consent decrees and the settlement agreement is they're intended to be very, very comprehensive comprehensive documents and living documents. So even if, MPD has a compliant policy right now, having this provision in place means that it's going to have to stay compliant. So I don't know what the current policy is. I just know that I can't make any assumptions that they have a different policy than this just because it's in the consent decree. But I can't speak to the specific policy.
Right, nor should you. And I will note, President Payne, maybe for our next quarterly update, we definitely should have someone from MPD or the implementation team here to be able to answer directly some of these questions, because, they're mostly the subject of this and can likely speak directly to these questions. And I will just already note for my follow-up question, this will likely be a staff memo and probably the one that I just asked for MPD. The next question that I have, and I'll send this to you also, but I'll just state it for the public record, and I don't expect you to be able to know this, CAO Anderson, but it's tied to provision 304, where it states first line patrol supervisors shall be assigned to supervise no more than 8 officers, absent temporary deviations to account for increased patrol hiring or minor gaps due to transfers or promotions. So I want to know, with that 1-to-8 ratio that is now required, what will be the new strategy for recruitment, especially under our current police contract, especially since I believe new hires have been new cadets. So I just wanted to get a sense of how MPD will be approaching their recruitment and hiring strategy around basically adhering to this new provision. And I don't think you all will have that information. So I'll send that question to the clerks on that one. The next question that I did have actually follows up to Councilmember Cashman's question around the alternatives to arrest for youth. I did want to get clarity if diversionary programs also fell into that category, because I do believe there are parts in the consent decree where it does encourage alternatives to law enforcement initiatives as well, and I thought that could be an area too, because we do have those programs here at the city and already within MPD, like the partnership with Hennepin County around their juvenile auto theft program.
Council President, Council Member, I'm paging through to try to find the youth section, and I can't find it very quickly, but yes, I think that's, sort of the idea is, warnings and citations are specific alternatives to arrest, but I think that the whole concept here, particularly with youth, but also with quality of life offenses is, let's get creative, and to the extent that we have, 1800 Chicago for not necessarily youth, but Youth Link. There are so many resources that we have in our community. Social workers through the Hennepin County. We have lots and lots of resources, non-law enforcement resources, and so what the consent decree is really kind of prompting us to do is to think more broadly, think more big picture, and identify, through policy, but through training, through collaboration, and a lot of what we see in the consent decree actually requires us to get input from community partners when we're building training, and a lot more, classification communication, so that we can, officers know what the options are, so that they are able to divert youth, divert individuals who are involved in quality of life offenses to other resources. And so we're not using, arrest as sort of only one necessary sort of situation with particularly youth and quality of life offenses. So it's really sort of a different way of, maybe not different, maybe that's not fair. It is a way of thinking about what our holistic resources are and what the options are that could be in the nature of diversion as well. Yep.
That's good to know. And I know that's an area of focus in the Public Health and Safety Committee too, where I think, I can't recall if it's either President Payne and Councilmember Chavez, where you all also will be having a staff motion or a legislative directive coming back in the coming weeks on either sorry, it might not actually be you, but one of our council members did have a legislative motion coming back with, I think, additional programs for adolescents experiencing contact with the criminal justice system and analysis of what's in existence. So that's good to know that that falls into the category too. That next, I also want to loop back to another point that Councilmember Cashman raised, because this is something that I've also shared. I do often get irritated when I hear this statement around, we should completely expect to be essentially like in a consent decree or even the settlement agreement for 20 years or so, because that's typically have been the standard for other cities where they've been in these processes or agreements for 12 plus years, and have spent tens of millions of dollars on it. And I think that's a scapegoat process. And we should not set that as expectations for our police department. We've experienced mismanagement of it for far too long and should not elongate that process, and that only does a disservice to our residents. And I absolutely would like to see compliance with both agreements for, as quickly as possible, so that we are out of it as soon as possible, and to have that be maintained into longevity. And I think that is absolutely as possible. They have a pretty significant budget to make that happen. And with that said, I did want you to talk a little bit more about some of the really good termination provisions that you also was able to get embedded in the consent decree process. And I don't think that was included in the presentation around being able to do some of the, was it sectional termination? Mm-hmm. So yep. If you could talk a little bit more about that too.
Council President, Councilmember Wansley, and this is actually very similar to the MDHR agreement. There's this concept of partial termination, which essentially means that if we are able to, and it's always the city's burden to prove that we've achieved and sustained full and effective compliance, but if we can do an entire section, so maybe we are not in complete compliance on, I don't know, body-worn camera quite yet, but we've done everything that we need to do on use of force, we can request for use of force, if we can show we've attained compliance and we've maintained it for the requisite period under the requirements, which it's usually 2 years, some it's 1. If we can show that and we can sustain our burden to show, yes, we got there, we maintained it, we held people accountable for 2 solid years, then we can actually get that whole discrete section, is how it's referred to in the consent decree. We can get that terminated, and so there's no more monitoring done with that. The other provision that we negotiated, as I said, how MDHR and DOJ sort of fit together, they're not in exact fit. So, for example, they both have a use of force section. DOJ's use of force section builds upon, I would say, and has some additional provisions above and beyond MDHR for use of force. So we could theoretically be in a position where we're able to prove that we're in full and effective compliance with the whole use of force section under the MDHR agreement, but we're not quite there because of the few extra things in DOJ's use of force section. But we have provisions in DOJ that would basically say to the monitor, you've got to look at this now that we've gotten, partial termination of the similar provision in MDHR, and figure out, is there a way to be more cost effective with the monitoring? And that could include actually not monitoring things that we have already shown we are, so the whole section doesn't terminate, but it could be that the monitoring would kind of slow down. It's still enforceable, so if for some reason we we showed compliance, but then we slipped and we're back to non-compliance because it's still part of the consent decree, then the monitor would go back to monitoring those things. But it really gives kind of a flexible approach for the monitor to really be able to kind of coordinate these two agreements and to be as cost-effective on the monitoring as possible.
Thank you so much. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you, Councilmember Wansley. Thank you, Madam City Attorney. I'll just add that, the implementation of this work is going to span the City Attorney's Office, the Police Department, the Civil Rights Department, partnering with ALIFA, strengthening our Community Commission on Police Oversight. And I think that this subcommittee can be a venue to bring all those different silos together so that we can get a much more comprehensive view. I think this legislative directive sets the foundation. Today's presentation was very much of an overview, but the legislative directive did get into more specifics around budget, what are we allocating per program. We want to see what are we spending on each of those different initiatives. And I think we'll use this as a venue to build that more comprehensive report back out, especially as we think about the reporting requirements of ALIFA and what reporting we should be doing here at the city, as well as having an oversight and evaluation department on the legislative side that can help maybe connect some of those pieces as well and connect all these pieces to stronger awareness to our community, because I think that's ultimately what we want to get to, is that the community can see whether or not we're on track on some of these reforms. So thank you so much for that presentation. And with that, I will direct the clerk to receive and file that report and return the chair back to Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, President Payne. Next, we will receive reports from the standing committees on matters to be considered by the full council this Thursday. First, we'll begin with the Administration and Enterprise Oversight Committee, chaired by Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. The Administration Enterprise Oversight Committee is bringing forward 27 items for approval. The first is a gift acceptance from Houston Police Department. The second is a gift acceptance from the Big Cities Health Coalition. Third is a gift acceptance from the Bloomberg Fellowship. 4 is gift acceptance from the American Society of Association Executives. Number 5 is deleting from the agenda the gift acceptance from the University of Virginia's Center for Public Safety and Justice. And then 6 is a collective bargaining agreement, Minnesota Teamsters Public and Law Enforcement Employees Unit, Local 320, the Convention Center Unit, 2025. And then number 7 is collective bargaining agreement, Minneapolis Foremen Association, 2025 through 2027. Number 8 is the collective bargaining agreements, Minnesota Public Employees Association, 911 Unit 2025 through 2027. 9 is a bid for Bancroft Pond Improvement Project. 10 is a bid for ground-end traffic marketing thermoplastic. 11 is a bid for stabilized full-depth reclamation. 12 is a bid for Minneapolis Convention Center Hall cooling coil replacement project. 13 is a bid for ferric chloride. 14 is a bid for payment profiling and rental of roto milling services. 15 is a contract with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension for forensic DNA analysis. 16 is a contract with Homeline to provide legal advice, education, and resources to low-income renters. 17 is a contract amendment with Core Mechanical Services, LLC for sanitary piping replacement Phase 2 for Target Center project. 18 is a contract amendment with Creative Realities, Inc. for Target Center IPTV distribution system project. 19 is contract amendment with Amy Moser Consulting, LLC for 2025 Blueprint Approved Institute training and facilitation. 20 is a contract amendment with Urban Ventures Leadership Foundation for administration of the Pathway to New Beginnings Gun Diversion Program. 21 is a contract amendment with Ready Rebound, Inc. for firefighter recovery services. 2022 is contract amendments with various vendors for 2024 Homegrown Minneapolis Community Project. 23 is contract amendment with Be Fresh Productions LLC for public community media access services. 24 is administrative adjustments to the Partnership Engagement Fund. 25 is considering legal settlement workers' compensation claim of Troy Walker. And then 26 is legal settlement Miguel Lazada Correa v. City of Minneapolis. And 27 is election judge and deputy city clerk appointments for the January 14, 2025 Senate District 60 special primary and January 28, 2025 Senate District 60 special general election. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Seeing that no one is on queue, we'll next go on to the Budget Committee, chaired by Vice President Chuck Tai.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. The Budget Committee is bringing forward 2 items to this Thursday's council meeting. Item number 1 is appointments to the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee for Seat 5, which is in Ward 3, and Seat 26, which is in Ward 13. And item number 2 is approving the establishment of and the salary schedule for an appointed position in the police department for a bureau chief civilian. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. No one is on queue. Next up, we have the Business, Housing, and Zoning Committee, and we'll pass it on to Council Member and Vice Chair Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. The Biz Committee will be bringing 18 items to Thursday's council meeting. Number 1, approving a liquor license for Milindo Guanajuato Mexican Restaurant, approving a rental hall and extended hours license for Abyssinia Cultural Center. Number 3, approving a liquor license for Game Time Sports Bar and Arcade. Number 4, approving a liquor license for Owamni. Number 5, passage of ordinance amending Title 4, Chapter 64 related to animal care and control. Number 6, approving an interim use permit for a vehicle fleet-oriented service located at 3130 California Street Northeast. Number 7, approving 2 City Planning Commission appointments. Number 8, the liquor license revocation for Pimento Jamaican Kitchen. This item was sent forward without recommendation.
Councilmember, do you mind reading the actual part on the back side? That is the correct language.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, thank you. This is an important update. Unfortunately, we have not received that letter from the state, so I will be moving to approve the license revocation today. Number 9.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we can come back to that. Number 9, approving 4 liquor license. Number 10, approving 104 liquor renewals. Number 11, approving 5 gambling licenses. Number 12, approving 21 gambling renewals. Number 13, approving 6 Minneapolis Arts Commission appointments. Number 14, approving 1 Heritage Preservation Commission appointment. Number 15, approving and authorizing 2024 Emergency Solutions Grant Funding recommendations. And number 16, authorizing Great States Gap Loan to Mayday Cafe, 2 more items. Number 17, passage of resolution approving financial assistance for affordable housing projects. And number 18, authorizing amended terms for land sale located at 1828 DuPont Avenue North. I propose that we take up those 17 items and move it to council. It seems that there might be some discussion here on item number 8, the liquor license revocation for Pimento Jamaican Kitchen, and perhaps other members from the Biz Committee could speak to that.
Can we get some clarification on what actually happened in committee? Because this is just supposed to be a report back.
Right. So with item number 8, we were waiting to hear back from Amy Lingo about whether or not they were going to pay it. They said that they were, it looks like they were going to by council this Thursday, but there has been no update from Ms. Lingo about it. So as of right now, it'll still go to full council on Thursday, and you guys can decide what happens from there.
Yeah, that's fine. But what happened at Biz?
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I was not in attendance at Biz this week for a community meeting, so I will ask either Councilmember Cashman or Councilmember Rainville or Councilmember Jenkins to speak on the committee's actions.
Thank you, Councilmember Chowdhury. And biz, we motion to move it forward without recommendation to full council to give them the maximum amount of time to get the tax clearance submitted by this Thursday, which is still the goal. And we've had some back and forth with this business owner. Obviously, this is in Ward 10, but the business owner does live in Ward 7, so we've both been in touch with him. It's a really beloved restaurant on Bede Makaska. And we also heard that if the tax clearance can't be submitted by Thursday, that it would be preferential to actually withdraw the business license application rather than revoke the business license, so that when they come to open in the spring, again, because again, they're closed for the winter, when they come to open in the spring, they could apply again and get this sorted out. Withdrawal of a business license application looks better on the record than a revocation of the business license. So we're just doing everything we can to support this business, getting their documentation in order so that they can open up again in the spring on the lake. And we will work very hard to get that done in the next 2 days before council.
Perfect. So it was moved without recommendation. This is just a report back to committee of the whole. So what I'm just going to say is it's still good, obviously, without recommendation to full council. And then if they figure it out by then, we'll just remove it and figure that out. But it seems there's a plan forward. Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions? Vice Chair Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Just wanted to note, or just wanted to just clarify. So do we have the ability, should we come to Thursday, if the action is that they aren't able to fulfill that payment, would we have to take an action to send back to committee, or would we be bringing forward an action at full council?
My understanding is that per state statute, we're required to deal with the business license within a certain amount of days. So we don't have the option to send it back to committee. We have to dispose of it this Thursday.
So then at committee, we would make a motion to withdraw if that was the case, if they weren't able to fulfill the duties.
Councilmember, withdraw or delete from the agenda if we hear back from Ms. Lingo about any payment happening on their end.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it would be good for us to clarify what actions we need to take prior to full council.
All right. Any other questions? No one is on queue. So next up, we have the Climate and Infrastructure Committee. So I'll pass it on to the chair of that committee, Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Climate Infrastructure Committee is bringing forward 15 items. Item 1 is accepting a grant from the Met Council Environmental Services for private sewer lateral repairs. Item 2 is amending a previous action to update a grant amount. Pretty standard. Item 3 is amending the capital improvement program to include the 2nd Street North Sanitary Improvement Project and the 1st Avenue South paving projects. Item 4 is approving appointments to the Bassett Creek Watershed Management Commission. Item 5 is approving appointments to the Shingle Creek Watershed Management Commission. Item 6 is accepting an implementation grant for stormwater resilience. Item 7 is accepting a grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation for expanding the Stage 1 Digital Curb Management Pilot Project. Item 8 is authorizing a cooperative construction agreement with the Minnesota Department of Transportation for street lighting and sidewalk work on Dunwoody Boulevard. Item 9 is authorizing an agreement with the Met Council and the BNSF Railway Company relating to the Loose Line Regional Trail Bridge. Item 10 is authorizing a subordinate funding agreement with the Met Council for the Metro Green Line Extension, otherwise known as the Southwest Light Rail. Item 11 is authorizing an agreement with the University of Minnesota for a temporary construction agreement for the Oak Street Protected Bikeway Project. Item 12 is authorizing the submission of a grant application to the MPCA, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's Local Climate Action Implementation Grant Program. Item 13 is confirming Jim Voll to the Anti-Displacement Community Prosperity Program Board. Item 14, authorizing submittal of a grant application to the Minneapolis Foundation for the EPA Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grant-Making Program. And item 15 is authorizing the submittal of a grant application to the USDA Forest Service Wood Innovation Program for the Minneapolis Biochar Production Facility. So lots of great actions on grant applications and receiving grants as well. I'll stand for questions on these items.
Thank you. Seeing no one on queue, we'll go on to the Public Health and Safety Committee, and I'll pass it to the Vice Chair of that committee, Councilmember. Oh, okay. Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question of my speaker management. Oh, now there it goes. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask Chair Cashman about item, I believe, I'm sorry, I'm looking for it now. I lost the report. Please bear with me. There was Jim Ball was appointed to some committee, and I'm just curious what that committee is and how that relates to climate and infrastructure.
Yeah, this is related to the Blue Line extension project, which is why it came through this committee, although Jim Vole does work in the CPED department. And my understanding is that the anti-displacement community prosperity program changed the amount of seats per entity from 2 down to 1. So before we had like 2 members of the city participating on that board, and now we only have spot for 1. And so he was selected to be our city's representative on that board, and he's been serving on it for quite some time.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next up, we'll pass on to the Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. The Public Health and Safety Committee is bringing forward 4 items for approval. The first is fees for use of city-owned resources ordinance. The second is research on care courts and mental health and substance use disorder treatment in Minneapolis. Number 3 is compost and food waste reduction grant funding and partner contracts. And number 4 is training reimbursement from the Minnesota Board of Firefighters Training and Education. And with that, I'll stand for any questions. Oh, your mic's off.
Okay, sorry. I clicked it twice. Seeing no one on queue, that ends our meeting. So with that, we've concluded all business to come before the committee today, and hearing no objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.